every cell looks tiny, soft, and almost shapeless from the outside. But inside, it is not an unorganized bag of liquid. It has an internal framework called the cytoskeleton. The name literally means cell skeleton, but that can be misleading. Unlike the bones in a human body, the cytoskeleton is not a fixed structure that simply sits there. It is a living network of protein filaments that can grow, shrink, rearrange, pull, push, and rebuild itself depending on what the cell needs at that moment. This network spreads through the cytoplasm, and in eukaryotic cells it reaches from the area around the nucleus out toward the cell membrane. It helps the cell keep its shape, resist mechanical stress, move materials around, divide correctly, and even crawl through its environment. Without it, the cell would lose much of its organization and strength. The cytoskeleton is found across the living world, not only in animal and plant cells. Bacteria and archaea also have cytoskeletal systems, although their structures can differ from those in eukaryotes. In eukaryotic cells, the network is usually described through three major filament systems: microfilaments, intermediate filaments, and microtubules. Each has a different structure and role, but they do not work in isolation. Together they create a flexible architecture that supports the cell while still allowing constant change. This balance is important. A cell must be stable enough to survive pressure, stretching, and contact with neighboring cells, but flexible enough to divide, migrate, absorb material, and reorganize its internal contents. The cytoskeleton solves this problem by acting less like scaffolding made of steel and more like a construction crew that can rebuild the scaffolding while the building is still in use. Microfilaments are the thinnest of the three main cytoskeletal components. They are mainly made of actin, one of the most abundant proteins in cells. Actin filaments are especially important near the cell surface, where they help control shape, tension, and movement. Because actin filaments can assemble and disassemble rapidly, they allow the cell to respond quickly to changing conditions. If a cell needs to push part of its membrane forward, actin can build a supporting network in that region. If the cell needs to contract or tighten its shape, actin can work with motor proteins to generate force. This is why actin is central to processes like cell migration, surface deformation, and muscle contraction. It gives the cell both structure and movement, turning chemical energy into mechanical action at a microscopic scale. Intermediate filaments play a different role. They are generally tougher and more rope-like than microfilaments and help cells resist mechanical stress. If microfilaments are often involved in rapid motion and reshaping, intermediate filaments are more about durability. They help protect cells from being torn or deformed when tissues stretch, bend, or experience pressure. This is especially important in tissues that face regular mechanical strain, such as skin, muscle, and certain connective tissues. Intermediate filaments also help stabilize the position of internal structures, including the nucleus in many cells. Their importance becomes clearer when thinking about cells as parts of a tissue. A single cell needs strength, but tissues need coordinated strength across many cells. By linking with other cellular structures and neighboring cells, intermediate filaments help distribute mechanical forces so tissues can hold together. Microtubules are the largest of the three main filament systems. They are hollow tubes made from tubulin proteins, and they often act like highways inside the cell. Many organelles and vesicles cannot simply drift randomly through the crowded cytoplasm and arrive where they are needed. Instead, motor proteins move along microtubules while carrying cargo. This allows the cell to transport materials with direction and control. Microtubules are also famous for their role during cell division. When a cell divides, duplicated chromosomes must be separated accurately so each daughter cell receives the correct genetic material. Microtubules help form the spindle apparatus, which attaches to chromosomes and pulls them apart. In this role, the cytoskeleton becomes essential not just for cell shape, but for inheritance, reproduction, and the continuity of life. One of the most important features of the cytoskeleton is that it is dynamic. Its filaments are not permanent wires locked in place. They can grow by adding protein units and shrink by losing them. This constant remodeling lets the cell adapt its internal structure to new tasks. For example, a cell preparing to divide may reorganize microtubules into a spindle. A cell moving through tissue may build actin-rich projections at its front edge. A cell under stress may reinforce certain regions to resist deformation. This means the cytoskeleton is not only a support system, it is also a responsive system. It integrates information from the cell's environment, signaling pathways, and internal state, then changes its architecture accordingly. The same cell can have a different cytoskeletal arrangement depending on what it has experienced and what it is about to do. The cytoskeleton also helps organize the interior of the cell. A cell contains many components: the nucleus, mitochondria, vesicles, membranes, enzymes, and many other structures. If these were left floating without organization, cellular activity would become inefficient and chaotic. The cytoskeleton provides spatial order. It can position organelles, guide transport, and create regions within the cell where certain activities are more likely to happen. This is especially important because cells are crowded environments. Movement by random diffusion alone is often too slow or unreliable for larger cargo. By using cytoskeletal tracts and motor proteins, the cell can move materials from one region to another with purpose. In this way, the cytoskeleton is like a combination of architecture, road system, and logistics network inside a microscopic city. Another major function of the cytoskeleton is helping cells interact with their surroundings. Cells do not exist in isolation. They attach to neighboring cells, communicate with extracellular materials, and respond to mechanical forces from their environment. Through connections with the cell membrane, connective tissue, and other cells, the cytoskeleton helps stabilize tissues as a whole. It also allows cells to change shape and move. During migration, a cell can extend parts of its membrane forward, anchor itself, contract its rear, and pull its body along. Structures such as lamellipodia and podosomes are examples of specialized cytoskeletal arrangements that help cells explore, attach, or move through their environment. This matters in development, immune response, wound healing, and many other biological processes where cells must travel or reshape themselves. The cytoskeleton is also involved in endocytosis, the process by which cells take in material from outside. When a cell engulfs molecules, particles, or portions of membrane, it must bend and reshape its surface. That reshaping requires force and coordination, and cytoskeletal elements help provide both. The same principle appears in many cellular events. Membranes are flexible, but they need support and controlled force to form the right shapes at the right times. The cytoskeleton can also contribute to specialized surface structures like cilia and flagella. These are projections that can move fluid, sense the environment, or propel cells. Their movement depends on organized cytoskeletal components working with motor proteins. So the cytoskeleton is not hidden machinery only for internal organization. It can also create visible, functional extensions that change how a cell behaves in the outside world. A powerful large-scale example of cytoskeletal force is muscle contraction. Muscle movement depends heavily on microfilaments made of actin and motor proteins called myosin. Inside muscle cells, actin filaments are arranged in parallel structures, and myosin motors pull on them. When many myosin molecules act together, their tiny movements add up to a significant contraction. But this does not happen randomly. A nerve impulse triggers the release of calcium from an internal storage system called the sarcoplasmic reticulum. As calcium levels rise in the cytosol, the muscle cell receives the chemical signal that contraction can begin. This shows how the cytoskeleton connects signaling to motion. An electrical signal becomes a calcium signal, and that calcium signal allows protein filaments to generate physical force. The control system for muscle contraction depends on two key regulatory proteins, tropomyosin and troponin. Under resting conditions, tropomyosin blocks the interaction between actin and myosin, preventing contraction. Troponin acts as the calcium sensor. When calcium rises, it binds to troponin, causing a change that moves tropomyosin out of the way. Once the blocking position is released, myosin can interact with actin and pull. This produces contraction within the muscle cell. When countless muscle cells perform this process in a coordinated way, the entire muscle contracts. The result may be a heartbeat, a blink, a step, or a breath. At the deepest level, these familiar movements depend on cytoskeletal proteins converting molecular interactions into organized mechanical work. The cytoskeleton is therefore much more than a support structure. It is the system that helps a cell hold its form, protect itself from deformation, organize its interior, transport cargo, divide its chromosomes, absorb outside material, create specialized structures, move through tissues, and generate force. Its strength comes from its combination of stability and change. It can act like a scaffold, a set of tracks, a muscle engine, a communication partner, and a construction template, depending on context. Different organisms and cell types use cytoskeletal systems in different ways, and even one cell can remodel its network over time. The simplest way to understand it is this: life at the cellular level is not still. Cells are constantly building, moving, dividing, and responding. The cytoskeleton is the dynamic framework that makes that possible. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.